God, you are such a sore loser.
I am not a sore loser. It's just that I prefer to win, and when I don't, I get furious. Employee!
Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, Clint McClain. And this week we are headed to the Santa Ana Star Center in Rio Rancho, New Mexico for a hell of a fight night, UFC Fight Night 167, which is arguably better than the pay-per-views that we've been getting lately. So I, for one, am pumped. I've made a lot of early moves on this card, and I couldn't be more stoked to break this one down and share it with you all. Thank you for coming back to the show, diehards. Let's kick this week off like we always do. We have got to do the recap of last week's phenomenal betting card, which I say very, very heavily sarcastically. That was an absolute shit show, basically, in every sense of the word. We'll do our shout outs, and we have got to have a word from our sponsors. Go check out our boys over at GOAT Capital Sports. They are at GOAT Capital Sports on Twitter, and they cover basically everything that I don't. I am your resident mixed martial arts man. They cover basketball, football, baseball, college basketball. They've got everything that you could ever want over there, and they have been kind enough to sponsor the Die Hard MMA podcast. So give them a follow. They've got discounts for Die Hard MMA podcast listeners. Tell them Clint sent you. Check out GOAT Capital Sports today. Before I give the shout outs to the new subscribers and whatnot on YouTube, I do need to say thank you to every single one of you. First off, not only are the diehards the best, most supportive, most awesome fan base that a guy could ever ask for, but you guys are the most positive people, and I absolutely love you. We hit over 1,000 views on the UFC 247 breakdown video. For a guy like myself, for a small, growing YouTube channel, that is a huge, huge deal. We peaked out around 900 views for some of the other episodes, and that's only after they had been up for a long time, and some people went back to listen to them and things like that. You know, active the week of the fight, we were getting around 700 and 750 views, something like that. We have never gotten anywhere close to 1,000 views on a single video, so the fact that we hit 1.1 thousand views on the UFC 247 video last week before the fights kicked off on Saturday, that is just massive. Absolutely awesome. So I'm sorry we weren't able to have a winning betting night that night, but I love the fact that the podcast is getting that kind of attention. Now, if only all 1,000 people that watched the video would click that little subscribe button, we're at 462 subscribers on YouTube. We are headed the right direction, but that goal is 1,000 subscribers. So everybody hit the thumbs up button on this video. We got about 60-something, 65, 66 likes on that video as well. We can do better than that. I appreciate all of you that do hit that thumbs up button, because the likes and the subscriptions, they are what drives YouTube, that algorithm that gets the word out there for people who are not currently watching the show and lets them know it's something they might be interested in. Shout out to our new subscribers. We've got Luke, Richard, Krillzek, there we go, Krillzek, we've got Kadir, Yalizma, we've got I'm Junzi, Jose Felix, we have Amanda McKenzie, we've got Manny Ravuru, which I'm sure I'm butchering that, I apologize, Manny. We've got Orodo Limor, I'm butchering that one also. New subscriber, just the letter T. Lenita K, we've got by Lao Q. Man, we got a lot of subscribers this week. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Die Hard family. Thank you all so much for subscribing. Let's go over UFC 247, because what a card. Holy cow, we've got a lot to unpack on this one. So the fight kicks off, nothing too crazy. Austin Lingo and Youssef Zalal, and Austin Lingo is supposed to have this setup fight for an easy win, and like I said, I didn't really look into this one, but damn, I kind of wish I had. It feels like I missed a perfect opportunity here. Youssef Zalal was clearly the better fighter, and he dominated Lingo from start to finish, and I didn't quite get that hair on the back of my neck tingly feeling like I usually would in this kind of a situation, because I didn't spend a lot of time looking at that fight, but that set the tone for the entire rest of the night. This card was madness. So Andre Ewell versus Jonathan Martinez, the first terrible judge's call of the night. I said that I wanted to bet Martinez, and I was so close to pulling the trigger on Martinez midweek because I had convinced myself that he was the side, and you know what? He was. He won that fight, and the first score of the night, the first opportunity for the judges to fuck up, they did. Andre Ewell gets a decision that he did not deserve, and I'm very, very happy that I steered clear of this one, because as much as I would like to have, some money in my pocket and say that I bet Andre Ewell at the right time, he didn't deserve that win. That would have been a bad bet. And if I had bet Jonathan Martinez, I'd have been seriously pissed off. First off, because we'd be down another unit, but secondly, because it was a blatant robbery, and I would have been just incredibly angry at losing another unit in that kind of a situation. It's really good that we kind of kept it tight to the vest. Even though we had a relatively bad night this weekend, it could have been a whole lot worse with some of the leans and some of the thoughts that I had. So Domingo Pilarte gets blasted by Journey Newsom. That's another one that, just caught me completely off guard. It was one that I didn't have a strong feel for, but I was not expecting a 30-second fight out of them. So the card kicked off, and it kicked off in a hurry. So then we've got our first play of the day. Miles Johns takes on Mario Bautista, and this is one that I struggled with a little bit, but I was pretty confident that Miles Johns would take over with his wrestling. Round 1 went to Bautista. You're not going to get any bias from me here, folks. Even when I bet a card, even when I bet a fighter, I will tell you if I'm biased because I bet them. This was not the case. Round 1 went to Bautista, but every single thing that Miles Johns did, I liked what I was seeing. I absolutely believed that he had the right game plan, he was doing the right things, and if he had been able to implement that through rounds 2 and 3, we had a very damn good shot at winning that decision. Mario Bautista, though, he had other plans. Him and his corner made some amazing adjustments, and he hit a flying knee that just came out of left field, and props to him. He deserves that win. He absolutely deserves that win. And poor Miles Johns, poor us. I feel bad because I feel like we very much could have won that bet, but damn, what are you going to do? When somebody digs deep like that and they come out of left field with something nobody's expecting, not a whole lot you can say. So we dropped 1.25 units on that one, unfortunately. The next fight, though, was maybe the most painful one of the entire night because, I always talk about sports betting. Let's be real. It's gambling, right? So it's like poker. It's a game of incomplete information. There are times where you can make a very good decision or a very good call based on the information you have available to you, but then that guy just hits the perfect card on the river and you still lose that giant pot that's sitting in the middle and it was yours for the taking with a 90% probability just 2 seconds ago. Well, that's kind of what happened here. Alex Morono is literally better than Colin Williams everywhere. Absolutely everywhere, except Colin has massive knockout power. And if I was Alex Morono's coach, we would have won this fight, because if I had had 10 minutes with Morono right before this fight, I would have told him, dude, drag this guy into deep waters, take your time, piece him up. You'll get him with a second or a third round KO if you just use your skill set. What Alex did, though, is he decided that Williams didn't belong in the cage with him. He came out, hands down, chins up, and kind of went cyborg on him, decided he just wanted to bang it out and expected Chaos to fall before him. He expected to be the more dominant fighter, and he thought he was going to roll over Chaos. I don't care if you're a short notice replacement. I don't care if this guy is not better than you, but you cannot disrespect a fighter like that, and he gave Williams the one thing he needed to win this fight, and that was an opportunity to put his power to work. Morono took that first shot, and you can see on his face, oh shit. And that was it. It was a 27-second fight, and that hurt so bad because it blew our 2-unit parlay. I was so frustrated. I was screaming at the TV. I was pacing in my living room. I was really upset at that because 9 times out of 10, Morono wins that fight if he just goes in there with his head screwed on straight, and that's not what he did. So again, you just simply cannot underestimate human beings when you step into a cage like that. When you do, bad things happen. And if I had thought Alex Morono was going to do something like that, we would have been so far away from betting that fight. That was not supposed to happen. So the next fight was the closer of our parlay, Lauren Murphy versus Andrea KGB Lee. And now here's where you can tell I'm being unbiased. Our parlay was busted, right? As much as I want to be right on selecting the fight, I have absolutely no reason to care about this fight because our bet had already sank. Alex Morono lit our money on fire about 5 minutes beforehand, so it didn't matter to me who won or lost besides just the bragging rights of, well, I was half right. It was a close fight. That line was way, way wide. I honestly need to rethink what I think of Andrea KGB Lee. I think we may have seen the final product. I think she might have topped out as a fighter, and we're probably not going to see a much more sharpened or improved version of her going forward here. I really think that was solidified by what Lauren Murphy did. Now, Murphy seems to be... she's not really improving either. She's just got the same toughness, the same game plan, and she can bring the fight to people. And I thought Andrea was going to be able to out-physical her. Now, that said, I thought Andrea won the fight. I thought Andrea absolutely won the fight 2-1, but it was not a clear runaway decision. The judges, once again, though, this dude that wasn't even watching the fight, I know I've retweeted it myself, I screamed about it the night of the fight on Twitter, and everyone's been talking about it, even Joe Rogan ever since. The dude didn't watch a full minute of one of the fights, and that's at least what Joe Rogan was calling out. Who knows how many other times he did that throughout the evening, where he was just staring at his phone instead of watching the fight that he was supposed to be scoring. So one judge gave it 29-28 Murphy, one judge gave it 29-28 Lee. It was a split decision, and I fully expected it to go to Lee. When the judge read off 30-27, I thought that has to be Andrea KGB Lee. He scored at 30-27 for Murphy, which was a travesty. I can understand, I can get there if you think Murphy squeaked out a split decision, if you think she won it 2-1, but there is no way in hell she ever won 3 rounds. One of the worst scorecards I have ever heard written off. So whether or not we won our bet on that one, the wrong woman got the nod. Now, Lauren Murphy made a nice post on Instagram. Well, I guess it wasn't nice. It was just a good post. She was pretty pissed off because I'm sure people went after her. People like me who thought Andrea Lee won the fight. I never think it's right to harass fighters, especially when this kind of thing is not in their control. She said exactly what needed to be said. Her job is to fight, and that's what she did. She brought the fight to Lee. She made it a close fight. She made it competitive. She made it a good battle. That's her job. That's all she has control over, and the judges gave her the win. So props to her. Props to anybody who bet Lauren Murphy, because it should not have been that wide of a line. Going into it, I thought it should have been that wide, or maybe even wider, but Murphy proved to be a very, very good dog, whether or not I think she should have gotten the nod. The last fight on the preliminary card, just another absolute shit show. Trevin Giles versus James Krause. I broke this one down. I spent about an hour on it right after the fight got announced. Thank you to everybody that watched that and tuned in live with me. Let me know in the comments below if that's kind of more of something you want to see. I would love to do more live streams where I can jump on and interact with you guys in real time, answer questions, things like that. That was really fun. So if you want more of that, let me know. Also, hit the like button, comment. Those are the types of things where I can actually track whether or not you're interested, so I know if I can provide you that kind of content going forward. At any rate, another just awful scorecard. So I wanted to take Trevin Giles when all that money poured in on James Krause. So Krause opened up as a slight dog. I was hoping to get more money on him. I wanted to have, plus 150, plus 160, something like that. But he opened up plus 120-ish, I think, and he immediately got steamed. He got blasted all the way down to like minus 150, and Trevin Giles flipped to being a plus 120 underdog. Now, when that happened, I was scratching my chin and going, well, he's a hometown cop. Judges are going to be on his side, and realistically, he's fighting a guy coming in on 24 hours notice. At plus 120, I kind of like Trevin Giles. Whoever was a decent-sized dog I was going to like in this fight. I ended up passing simply because I was bouncing back and forth on the ways either guy could win this fight. On a full camp, I think James Krause mauls Trevin Giles basically any day of the week, but on 24 hours notice, I thought Trevin would be able to do enough, and that's exactly what happened, but that freaking idiot of a judge somehow gave the first round to Trevin Giles. James Krause had Trevin Giles back for 95% of the first round and had him in serious submission threat positions, and somehow you think Trevin Giles won that round? It makes no sense. It makes no earthly sense whatsoever. Now, I think Trevin Giles won the third round, and he scored the third round for James Krause. So, to me, in the end, it kind of evens out, but I understand that the first round is really the true problem here, and if you score that first round accurately, James Krause wins that fight. So, yikes. Another one where, a good pass. Just a really good pass. We would have got the cash if I had pulled the trigger on plus 120 Trevin Giles, but I could have said I wanted to pull the trigger on plus 130 James Krause, and then we would have got robbed. So hindsight is definitely my enemy here in that particular fight. I'm glad we got away from it, honestly, because could have and should have gone either way. It's another one where if we had pulled the trigger on the bet, we would have been on a wrong side winner. And I don't really like to be on wrong side winners. I want to be on the right side, and then I also want to win. Yes, I want to have my cake, and I want to eat it too. So then we move on to the main card. The weakest pay-per-view we've seen in years. So heavyweight, Derek Lewis takes on Ilir Latifi, and this is another one where people have disagreed with me. I'm not going to go to war to anybody. I think Ilir Latifi won. I absolutely think that he did enough with the grappling and control. I don't think Derek Lewis did enough damage to solidify 2 rounds. I think Latifi won it 2 rounds to 1. Again, I'm not going to fight you on it if you think Derek Lewis did enough to win. This is another situation where Latifi won the wrestling match and Derek Lewis won the fight. It just kind of depends on your perspective there. Usually I lean with the guy winning the fight, but in this case, I don't think Derek really did a whole ton of damage. Yes, the flying knees were fun. Yes, they were explosive and entertaining, but he never really hurt Latifi. I don't know, except for maybe round 3, and I thought Latifi had 1 and 2 in the bank already anyway at that point. So another one where I'm really glad I passed, because I almost took the stab on Latifi because I thought the line was just way too wide. But again, even if I believe Latifi won the fight, the final outcome of it was that it was close and hairy, but we would have lost another unit. So really lots of dodged bullets on this card. The next fight really, really upset me. So we've got Mirsad Bektic versus Dan Ige, and realistically, this is kind of what our whole night came down to here, because Mirsad Bektic was really rusty coming out in round 1. Dan Ige did the damn thing in round 1, had him in all kinds of trouble, lit him up on the feet. But to everybody that was talking about Bektic having chin issues, he silenced those critics right away. He took some serious shots from Dan Ige, and he answered with some of his own. He was in that fight. But clearly round 1 for Dan Ige. Round 2 was all you can eat Mirsad Bektic. He took Dan Ige down, put him on the mat, and damn near submitted him. I was so excited. He had a arm triangle choke, which first off is my favorite submission. He had that locked up, and he had about 1 minute and 40 seconds to work on it. At the UFC level, you would expect a guy like Bektic with that amount of time to finish that submission. Now, Ige is no slouch on the mat. He's very, very impressive, very high-level grappler. So in the end, I guess I got to say it doesn't surprise me that he didn't tap to that choke, but with the amount of power and raw strength that Bektic has, that's a blood choke. So you'll make the guy go unconscious if you squeeze hard enough. It doesn't matter how good their defense is. I was really hoping Bektic got that. But out of the two, Bektic was clearly the one closer to actually finishing that fight. And then we go to round 3, and here's where it really sucks, because it's 1-1. Bektic's feeling himself. He's got his game plan rolling. He's established that he's better on the mat. His wrestling is going to be good enough to stuff the jiu-jitsu of Ige. He gets Ige pinned up against the fence, and he's working on a single leg. The referee gave him no time to work on that single leg. I mean, the warning came immediately that if he didn't work, he was going to split him. Bektic is literally working on the takedown, and the ref steps in and centers them back into the middle of the cage. That right there ruined the entire fight for us. I don't often do this. Normally, when I look back on bets and I look back on cards, I want to learn a lesson. I want to learn what could I have done differently? Where did I go wrong? I need to reassess how I feel about Andrea KGB Lee. That line was way too wide, and I bit on someone who should not have been that big of a favorite. That's on me. Alex Morono made a bad fight IQ decision. I did say that he is a brawler. Maybe I shouldn't have trusted him at that large of a favorite line. Those I will shoulder. Those I will learn from. This I blame on the referee, because Bektic was doing everything he was supposed to. His ability is wrestling. His path to victory is wrestling. And when the referee is supposed to make the action move, I understand that, but not in that amount of time. You have to give a guy the opportunity to work his game plan, and that's what Bektic was doing. For the referee to step in a matter of seconds and split them up after he's got a position against the fence, I mean, in my opinion, that tilted the fight to Ige right there, because Bektic had to re-get that position. It took him until the end of the round to land another takedown on Ige, and of course by then he's even more tired and wasn't able to do anything with it. I firmly believe that if the referee had not split them, Bektic would have either been able to control Ige against the fence and land some shots, enough control time basically to seal that round, or he would have gotten the takedown. And if he got a takedown in round 3, Ige wasn't getting back up. We saw that in round 2, Bektik had total control on the mat. So I am legitimately pissed about that one because we ended up going minus 2.74 units on the night, and instead of losing 1.29 units, we would have gained a unit back. So it would have been a 2.29 unit swing, and we would have been down less than half a unit on the night if this fight had gone our way. So really upset me. The next fight, heavyweight, Juan Adams, Justin Tafa. If you took Tafa, congratulations. That was a great bet. He was obviously the more powerful fighter in that fight, and I love taking big, juicy heavyweights. Normally speaking, I probably would have been on Justin Tafa, but I do admittedly maybe have a weakness and a soft spot for Juan Adams, and I hope the guy all the best. I mean, I really do. He's a really nice guy. He's been through a lot. He's had a hard life. I know this is sports betting, and we're not supposed to intermingle those kinds of things, but, you know, if you bet Tafa, congratulations. I really hope Juan Adams either gets a shot in maybe a different organization, because he's one of those guys that he's got the physical capability, I think, to be a successful fighter, but he got thrown to the wolves way early. Realistically, he probably shouldn't have been in the UFC this early, and I hope he can recover and make something happen of this, because I do think he's got the physical ability to get it done if he has the right amount of time to grow and, you know, mature as a fighter. So moving on, the co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko versus Katlyn Chookagian. I was so close to pulling the trigger on Valentina by decision. It was minus 120. I thought that was an absolute home run because Katlyn is so hard to hit. She's elusive. She stays at range. I knew Valentina was going to be better basically everywhere, but I thought Katlyn would dance around her and Valentina would be happy to sit back and pot shot her. Valentina comes out, and I mean, just mauls her. The first two rounds were kind of what I expected them to be. Chookagian wasn't landing anything, and Valentina's counter shots were just massive. And then Chookagian jumps guard in round 3, and Valentina just kind of looks at her like, what are you doing? And Chookagian goes, oh, bad idea, steps down, and then as soon as her feet hit the floor, Valentina goes, okay, you're going for a ride, bitch, and throws her on her back. And I mean, it was just, holy cow, over from there. I mean, I do think it was an early stoppage. I don't think that Shevchenko was dealing that much damage, but it was very clear that Chookagian was not getting up from that position. I think the referee honestly saved Chookagian some brain cells and probably some facial scarring, because there's a chance that Valentina would have just gone off and busted her even further open if they had let her. Now, here's the part where I'm about to like cry in my beer. I'm ready to pull out the extra, backup bottle of Fireball because we are having another really bad night, and this bad run I've been on has been really difficult for me to handle. Even though we know we've got to keep it positive, I'm having a tough time because I'm used to being much better at my UFC bets and selections than this. But we go into the Jon Jones fight, and the first two rounds, I mean, it's just, I'm like, there's no way they're going to keep this pace up. We've got Jon Jones by decision at plus 230, and there is no way in hell this can possibly continue. Now, I know there's some controversy on this fight as well as far as the scoring is concerned, but I think that we made the sharpest play possible on Jones by decision at plus 230. If you took Reyes straight, I mean, you got good value on a good solid dog that could have won this fight, but taking Jon Jones as a minus 500 favorite, flipping it and taking it at plus 230, I mean, come on, you got to give me some credit there. So this thing going to a decision the way that it did, and even if you adjust the scorecards and give Reyes more of a chance, I mean, it was a unanimous decision for Jon. So even if you don't agree with that, even if you think Reyes should have been the one to win the fight, the value on Jon Jones plus 230 by decision is massive. So for me personally, I do think Jon Jones won the fight. Now, granted, I did have a bet on him. When I was live watching the fight, I scored round 1 for Reyes, 2 for Jones, 3 for Reyes, and then 4 and 5 for Jones. So I had Jones winning 3-2. That was live during the fight, obviously. I haven't gone back and rewatched it or anything like that. From what I've heard, a lot of people are really upset about anybody that scored round 2 for Jones. But I mean, that was me in the moment. So I would need to go back to correct that if there was anything. Basically, what it came down to was rounds 2 and 3. How did you score them? Because they were very, very close. They were razor thin. I know there's been a lot of discussion about this fight on a lot of channels. Luke Thomas did a thing on it. My boy, Lock of the Night, did a split decision coverage on it. And basically, what it means to me is that if you had 29-28 Reyes, I'm not going to fight you. If you had 29-28 Jones, I'm not going to fight you. I don't know that anybody necessarily should have 4-1 for either fighter, but the fact that rounds 2 and 3 were so close, you theoretically could. If you gave it 4-1 for Reyes, I can get there. I can absolutely get there because I can see, if both of the, in my opinion, it was 2-1, no matter which way you scored it going into the third. I had Reyes up 2 rounds and Jones locking up 1 after 3. And I feel like that's the most secure way to do it. But if those 2 close rounds, if you gave both of them to Reyes or if you gave both of them to Jones, then that opens up the possibility of a 4-1 scorecard for either guy or a 29-28 for Reyes. And I mean, the judging was awful, but the decision for Jon Jones was unanimous. So even if that guy that scored a 4-1 for Jones, even if you're saying he should be, hanged and publicly flogged for his bad choices, which for the rest of the card he definitely should, but for this one maybe not so much. Even if you do think that, it's reasonable to get there. You know what I mean? And even if he had flipped and had it scored more accurately at like a 29-28 for Jones, or even if he had scored it for Reyes, the other 2 judges scored it for Jones. So Jones straight up won the damn thing. I mean, I don't necessarily, I can see how you thought Reyes would have won. I wouldn't have argued with you. It was a very close fight, but I loved our bet, and I'm so happy we cashed a plus 230. That really softened the blow on the night. So UFC 247, we went 1-3. We dropped 2.74 units, and that sucks. I'm not happy with that, but that brings the overall 2020 record to 5-14 on picks, minus 10.78 units. Now, if you're really getting upset with me, which I know some people are, just remember we are still up money. If you tailed me, if you have been with me since the get-go, the 2019 record had us ending at plus 19.88 units. We are still sitting comfortably up about 9 units. Now, obviously, I don't want to be in the single digits. I want to be up much more than that, and don't worry, we will get there, but the fact remains that all in all, we are still profitable here on the podcast. And I don't normally give any attention to haters or anything like that, but there was this guy on Twitter, man. He came after me before the Jon Jones fight, and he basically was like, dude, stop. You have to stop doing this. There's no handicapping involved here. All you do is pick favorites. I've been following you for a year, and all you do is pick favorites, and you don't even handicap. There's no handicapping whatsoever involved.
Oh, wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
I mean, come on. If you have been with me any more than just 2 weeks, you know that my breadwinners are all dogs. Rule number 2 of the Die Hard MMA podcast is make a case for the dog. All we do is bet dogs here. And it is funny, actually. Well, it's not funny. It more sucks. But so far in 2020, we had a card that was out there. You know, the McGregor-Cerrone fight was a little wild. And then we had a fight night where all the favorites came through. Hey, absolutely all the favorites blasted through on one of the cards. And then the most recent fight night was all the dogs. So it's been so polarized so far in 2020 that if you were on the dogs 2 weeks ago, which I was, you won nothing. And then this week, if you played favorites, you won nothing. Like, it's so crazy. That's not something that we normally see. Don't worry. It will even out over the course of the year. It's just been a wild start to 2020. Let's get this thing back on track starting Saturday with UFC Rio Rancho. This has been a very long recap, but that's because there's been so much to talk about, so I do apologize for the length of this bad boy. Let's get started breaking down these freaking fights. Our first fight of the night kicks off. We have got a flyweight match between Raulian Paiva taking on Mark De La Rosa. And this is a pretty good way to start the night, actually. I feel like this fight is going to be relatively entertaining and competitive, but both guys are coming off of a loss. This is probably a loser leaves town type of match. Mark De La Rosa is 11-3, 25 years old, and Raulian Paiva on the other side of this thing is 24 years old. He is 18-3. Now, when the UFC broadcast starts, you are going to hear to the death how Mark and his wife, Mrs. Bumblebee De La Rosa, are the first man and wife couple to ever compete on the same UFC card. For them, that's actually probably got to be really cool, given the extra spotlight. Even though he's the first fight of the night, and the fact that his back is against the wall, I expect Mark to show up here in a way that, hopefully we've never seen him show up before. He's got to have a win or at least a fight of the night type of performance if he wants to stay in the UFC. Now, Mark is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He has decent takedowns. He's not a phenomenal wrestler, but he does have good transitions and back takes. He scrambles really well. He does recover well. He does get clipped, though. He's got good boxing. He attacks in flurries, and this is going to be a good matchup for him. Now, Raulian Paiva on the other side of this thing, like I said, he's coming off of 2 losses of his own, but he's got a decent chunk more experience in pro MMA than Mark does. Now, he's going to have the reach advantage. He's a BJJ brown belt, so Mark should have a check mark in that direction. The biggest thing I noticed with Paiva is he just doesn't move his head. He is durable, though. He's the type of take one to give one type of fighter, and this is not the type of matchup where you necessarily want to see that. Mark's not a huge threat when it comes to the striking, but he's clipped and hurt a couple people before, so if Paiva plays around with him too much, you never know what might happen in that kind of a situation. He throws good counter hits. Paiva is easily taken down, though, and that's something where even though Mark De La Rosa does not have the best offensive wrestling, he might have enough offensive wrestling in this particular matchup. Paiva's athletic. He does give up scrambles, and he wings hooks from his hip. He's fought a very low level of competition up until this point, actually, and that's something where I almost feel like he's got kind of a boxing-esque record, even though he's 18-3. I feel like it's almost a little bit fraudulent. Now, the line currently sits with Paiva being favored. He's about minus 200, minus 210. You can get Mark De La Rosa at plus 175, as high as plus 180 in some places. And I feel like this is a dog or pass spot. I guess for the pick, I'm going to have to say Paiva probably wins this thing. I think he controls it on the feet using his range. He's got really long arms and limbs. I think he's going to be able to pop De La Rosa and make it difficult for him to close that distance. But I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if this went to a split decision or something like that. And I actually really wanted to pull the trigger and bet on Mark De La Rosa in this spot because I feel like I can see a couple paths to victory, but I am still trying to right the ship here. I'm trying to keep our picks close to the vest. I don't want to rapid fire on this kind of a card. And even though normally if I feel like a fight's going to go to a split decision, I will take the dog, especially when you're getting plus 175, plus 180. But the fact that Mark is just so non-athletic and Paiva is, and then dealing with that reach disadvantage, I feel like Paiva's gonna end up scraping this one out. So the pick is Paiva. From a betting perspective, it's just gotta be a pass. The next fight is a women's bantamweight fight where Macy Chiasson takes on Shanna Young. And yes, you heard that correctly. Nico Montano has pulled from the card. Very unsurprisingly, she does this a whole lot, and it's kind of a bummer. I was actually looking at maybe taking a dog stab on Nico Montano. Macy Chiasson is 5-1 in the UFC, and she is 28 years old. She is relatively large for the division, very, very physically strong, but she seems to have a problem with the wrestling. She does get taken down and she does get tired out. Lena Landsberg was able to exploit that massively, and I thought that someone who's tough and durable like Nico Montano and just kind of a hard-nosed wrestler would be able to, kind of grind her out for 15 minutes, and I thought we'd have another nice little dog shot there. However, with the pullout, we have got Shanna Young stepping in here instead. She's 28 years old. She is 7-2, and she competed mostly in Invicta, it looks like. I know nothing about her. It does look like she's got a couple of submission wins and a couple of decisions, so if she is at all a powerful ground fighter, we might have the same strategy here, and I'm hoping with her being a short notice replacement, the line is going to be even wider. You'd expect someone coming from Invicta to be a big dog against somebody from the UFC, and that's just general public is going to kind of think that way, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of tape study on Shanna Young because I really know nothing about her or her skill set, but keep an eye on that Twitter because if I decide to go ahead and make a play on her, then that'll be tweeted out later on. For now, for the sake of just picks, I guess I've got to go with Macy Chiasson because we don't know jack about Young. So for now, the pick is going to be Chiasson and a complete pass from a betting perspective. But I do have to give a pick because Mr. Arkansas continues to do the UFC competition, the betting competition that he's having, all basically the YouTube personalities that break down bets and give picks and stuff. He's got to split into different divisions and things. And do me a favor, don't go check it out because I am having such a rough start to it. I'm in the bottom of my decision. I am the Miami Dolphins of my division right now. So don't look at it for like 2 more weeks. Then you can go cheer me on. No, I'm just kidding. Go give Mr. Arkansas a follow. Give that man some likes. Check out the standings. What he's doing is actually really cool. Next up, we are headed to bantamweight, where we have got a tilt between Casey Kennedy and Merab Dvalishvili, and this is a fantastic fight. It's also our first bet of the night, so if you follow me on Twitter, I have already tweeted out a play on this one. We got Casey Kenney at plus 185, and did we crush that move or what? As soon as I tweeted that out, I mean, I was kind of debating. Sometimes I like to save the picks for the show. Once I lock a pick in, I will tweet it out to make it public knowledge, but if I don't expect the line to move, I mean, I've got to give you some kind of material on the show, right? So I don't always give those out, but if I think a line is going to move, then I will definitely tweet out that I got that pick, especially with the underdogs, because I want you all to be able to tail that value. Well, if you tailed me, you were part of that line move, and you got a much better line that is out there right now, because Casey Kenney got absolutely steamed. Tons of money came in on him, and now the only place you can get him even close to that, it looks like BetDSI still has a plus 171 floating out there. I'm not sure how that's possible, but he's all the way down to plus 125 in spots. You can get plus 145 at 5 dimes. I mean, all the good money on Casey Kenney is absolutely demolished at this point. So Merab Dvalishvili is 29 years old. He's 9-4, and he's 2-2 in his last 4. Both of his last 2 fights were close and competitive. The Frankie Saenz fight was a split decision. So, I mean, I've had some people say that he could arguably be 4-0 in his last 4, and I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but they've been close, they've been competitive. He definitely belongs at the UFC level. Casey Kennedy on the flip side of this thing is 28 years old. He is 13-1. He is a 9-time judo champion for the United States. He is he predominantly uses like body and leg kicks. He whips those things out there pretty regularly. He's a little small for the division, but he's one of those guys that's just so damn scrappy that it doesn't matter. He transitions to the back almost instantaneously. His back takes are fantastic. He uses great wrist control. He uses the cage to defend takedowns very well. It looks like he uses Travis Brown elbows anytime people are trying to take him out, which I absolutely love to see. And the real thing is that he scrambles from bottom. He's always moving. He will not settle for bottom control. He will not settle on his back. He always makes a scramble, and he forces transitions, which allows him to reverse, sweep, mount, back take. He's incredible on the mat. Now, Merab Dvalishvili, this dude's an absolute tank. He's mostly known for his judo, sambo, and wrestling. He has relentless takedown offense, and he pushes a pace. Now, for most guys his size, that can be a problem, but when you've got a guy who's naturally a little bit smaller and is fighting, up a weight class or fighting in his natural weight class like Kenney, he's got a phenomenal gas tank. He can keep up with that kind of a fight style, no problem. Now, Merab does train with Aljo Sterling, but this is kind of a Brown Bear Clark situation where you might train with John Jones. That doesn't make you John Jones. He's not nearly as good as Aljo is, although he is a threat. He does use chain grappling. He relies heavily on his pure physical strength. He's very strong for the division. He's got heavy hands, and he does swing big power hooks. When he is on top in scrambling situations, he floats very, very well to stay heavy and on top position. When you cut this thing down, I think this is going to go to a split decision, and that's exactly why I snagged Kenney early. I know a lot of sharp people snagged Kenney, and obviously it's an absolute landslide of money on Kenney, but the reason I took him is because I can see this fight getting hairy. I think there's going to be a lot of clinch control situations, and Merab can be controlled in the clinch. Casey can push him up against the cage, lock up some serious minutes being in control there, and then when this thing does eventually hit the ground, I think that Casey's going to be forcing those scrambles, and Merab I don't think is going to be able to keep up in the scramble situations. If it's pure wrestling, then he's got the edge, but in these scrambly jiu-jitsu wiggly type spots, I think Kenney's going to have a clear advantage. I also think Kenney's going to have a slight reach advantage in this one, and I think that he's going to, now actually I'm talking out my ass, let me go ahead and pull that up so I can give you an actual answer as to whether or not he'll have a reach advantage. He seems taller and longer to me, but besides the reach advantage, whether or not he has one, I do think that Casey's going to be the slightly more technical striker as opposed to Merab, who is going to be the more physical and power striker. So if anyone's going to land a knockout, I mean, it's probably going to be Merab as opposed to Casey Kenney. So that is my read on the fight, and I absolutely love our position at plus 185. And the fact that we beat that kind of a line move just makes me all giggly inside. That's something that we don't talk about enough on the podcast. Beating line moves is the best thing that you can do in sports betting. All you can do is get your money into a good spot, beat the line movement, get the best of the number, and hope it turns out right, because we've got situations like Morono last week where we have absolutely no control once that cage door shuts, and all we can do is hope we're on the right side and get the best of the number. That's what we have done here. Let's find out if we're on the right side. Hopefully we get the win. Now, it looks like there is no discrepancy in the reach. I just want to go ahead and clarify that real quick. Casey Kennedy is 1 inch taller, and they both have a 68-inch reach. So I do expect this to be relatively close and competitive. This one's going to be fun. Looking at the statistics, Casey has a slight edge when it comes to offensive output, but Dvalishvili has a slight edge when it comes to strikes absorbed per minute. However, I think that mostly is going to have to do with the wrestling. Those numbers get skewed just a little bit when you take somebody down and grapple with them. They're not going to be able to hit you as much as you're able to hit them, and that kind of inflates that number. So when it comes to their numbers, very, very similar. Very similar numbers. And actually, Casey Kenney has a better takedown defense rating than... Oh, no, I apologize. I got that mixed up. Casey Kenney has a better takedown accuracy rating than Dvalishvili does, but Dvalishvili has more takedowns attempted per minute. So this one is going to be a brawl. The beginning of this fight night is going to be fun. The first couple cards, the undercard, there's some serious action going on in these fights, and I love our first dog shot. Plus 185, Casey Kenney, let's freaking go. Our next fight is at flyweight, where Rogerio Bontorin takes on Ray Borg. Now, Rogerio is 16-1. He fights out of Brazil. He's 27 years old, and I am super impressed with this kid. Ray Borg is the guy we all know at this point, the Taz Mexican Devil, 26-year-old, 12-4. He's got the son who's having all those medical issues and is a very, very sad tale at this point. He got himself right in his last fight when he won against Gabriel Silva, which I was very, very happy to see. I want him to keep his job in the UFC and continue being able to support his family. So this is another one where my heart goes out to this fighter, and I really wish him well, even if we might have to bet against him. Now, Rogerio is basically solid everywhere. One thing he really does that I like is he cuts off the cage. He never chases his opponent. He always cuts angles to make sure they go where he wants them to go. He's very strong in the clinch. He has excellent offensive BJJ, especially off of his back. He throws up stuff off his back that's really tight and either allows him to scramble back up to his feet or threatens his opponents. He's extremely fast in scrambles. He has great reversals and back takes. He's also very durable. He runs into anytime we've seen him run into any kind of issue or adversity, he's been able to really dig deep and get on by that. So I love seeing that. And the fact that he's on the kind of roll that he is, he's just steamrolling people. This dude's a finisher too. He's got a lot of finishes by submission. His last fight against Paiva, he ran into some trouble, and then he came back hard and opened up a really bad cut on Paiva with a couple of big power shots. I like what I see from this guy's striking as well. Now, Ray Borg, like I said, we all know the well-documented struggles that this guy's had. He got to the point where he fought Demetrius Johnson back in 2017. After losing that, he dropped a fight to Casey Kenney, which now we are on Casey Kenney, so we kind of have to, put a little asterisk next to that. It's the best that's ever been at this division besides Henry Cejudo, and then a guy that we're very high on that he lost to. But now he fought Gabriel Silva, who is the younger brother of the bad Eric Silva, who's no longer in the UFC, a UFC debutant. He beat him, got back on track, but he's going right back into the fire in this fight here with Rogerio. We know Borg is all about the wrestling. He scrambles very, very well. He's been very inconsistent lately, though. It does look like he's been training with John Dodson, which I find that to be something of note. John Dodson's very, very fast and athletic. That's going to give him a good look for Rogerio. And based on Ray Borg's Instagram, he's in the best shape we've seen him in a long time. It looks like I think he fought Casey Kenney at 135 and maybe even Silva, but now he's dropping back down to his home weight class of 125, and he's got abs again. The dude looks like he's taking this seriously. He looks like he's in a much better place mentally, physically, emotionally with his family. So this is one that I unfortunately cannot step in front of. I'm going to pick Rogerio to get this win here, and since Rogerio is an underdog, you would think that means I want to bet him. He's plus 110, plus 120, somewhere in that ballpark. You can get minus 140 140 it looks like on Ray Borg, up to minus 148, down as low as minus 137. So it's right in that window here. Really tight lines all the way across the board, but I am definitely not trusting Ray Borg with my money at this point. I am high on Rogerio. I think he's got a great future, and I actually think he's going to win this fight, but I don't want to step in front of Ray Borg, because if he really is reinvigorated the way he looks to be, the way he was before he fought Demetrius Johnson, this is going to be a scramble fest, and the judges are going to have no idea what they're looking at. The wrestling and jiu-jitsu is going to flow seamlessly between these two guys, and it's going to be very, very, very hard to score, and I don't want to be anywhere near this fight from a financial perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Rogerio, but it's a pass from a betting standpoint. If I had to bet one, I would take the dog, but thankfully we get to pick our spots, so let's move on to the next fight. This next fight is really exciting to me. We've got a lightweight fight between Jim frickin' Miller and Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman, and this is gonna be fun. So Jim A10 Miller is 31-13, one of the legends, one of those guys who's been around forever, one of the best fighters to have never touched UFC gold. Hot Sauce Holtzman is 36-year-old. He is 13-3. So they are the same age, but Jim has a massive amount of experience, more than Hot Sauce does. Now, Jim throws with bad intentions with absolutely every strike. He's got some serious pop on his punches, and he has fast hand speed. He has the nastiest guillotine choke I have ever seen. When he slapped that thing on Clay Guida in his last fight, Clay Guida was out cold, and it took no time whatsoever to completely sever him from his consciousness, and that's not something that we see a lot. I mean, Clay Guida gets subbed, sure, but nobody goes out that fast. That guillotine was freaking beautiful, and he throws heavy left hands over the top. That's a weapon he likes to use very much regularly. He throws heavy with his left hand, and that's going to be open in this fight, I think. That's really the key to this fight. He's a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He peels his opponents off the cage when they get into those grappling clinch type situations. It opens up options for him to be able to transition, take the back, drag his opponents to the mat. All good stuff. Jim Miller is an absolute machine. He's also never lost to anybody outside of the top 15. So whenever he fought any of these guys that he lost to, and this is a who's who of names, they were all ranked at the time of him losing to them. It's not something that he does. So if you're not a top 10, top 15 fighter, you're not going to beat Jim Miller. He's known for having Lyme disease. It seems like he has beaten that, or he's found a way to manage it, because it's almost like he's peaking at this point very, very late in his age. I mean, he's 36 years old. You usually expect fighters, cowboy style to be on the downtrend, but he really looks like he's putting it together now, and he looks more and more impressive with each outing. He's turned into a first round finisher. The dude is something else. And let's just list these names off again. I know we've done this before because we broke down 2 of his fights last year, but Dustin Poirier, Anthony Pettis, Francisco Trinaldo, Dan Hooker, Charles Oliveira. Those are the guys that he's lost to. I mean, you want to go further back, Chiesa, Sanchez, Benil Dariush, Donald Cerrone. Like, he is fighting the absolute best of the best, and those are the only times he drops a fight. Without his Lyme disease, I dare say Jim Miller may have been a title contender and maybe even a champion. The dude's got all the skills he needs. He's an absolute monster. He's a hard-nosed beast. And seriously, if he didn't have that Lyme disease holding him back, who knows where that guy would have gone. Scott Holtzman on the flip side of this thing, he's got excellent footwork. He is built like a brick shit house, and he has good in and out movement. He circles very well, and he blitzes in. He explodes in. When he does get people to the ground, he's got strong top control. He leg kicks well from distance, and he attacks in flurries when he gets close. He can give up the takedowns, and he can get controlled up against the cage, both things that I think Jim Miller can do to him. He is very, very physical. He's got a good get-up game. It's hard to hold him down because of how physically strong he is. But the thing that I've seen the most is that his right hand is his moneymaker. He throws hard with that right hand, and that's the punch that really damages and hurts people. However, right before he throws that hand, he chambers it. It comes down from his chin. He leaves his left hand up and out kind of as a feeler to throw his jab, and he's always got that right hand tucked very, very closely to his chin. But before he throws it, he has a very noticeable dip where it drops away from his face right before he lets it go. I think that Jim is going to be able to beat him to the punch. I think as soon as Scott looks like he's going to fire, Jim will see that. He will recognize that Holtzman is chambering that fist, and then he will blast that left hand right down his mouth. I expect to be a club and sub victory for Jim Miller. This is another one that if you follow me on Twitter, I tweeted out a play on this one. We locked up Jim Miller. We beat another line move. We got my guy Jim A10 Miller at plus 125, and that cash is gone. Jim Miller is no longer that big of a dog, so we beat another line move. Now the best you can get on him is plus 115, it looks like, at Pinnacle. He's plus 110 pretty much everywhere else. So it's not a huge line jump, but hey, like I said before, all we can do is beat the line move and hope for the best. I forgot to mention that Jim Miller is actually going to have a 2-inch reach advantage, so like I said, I see a clear path to victory for Jim Miller here. He's going to beat him to the punch with that left hand, and he's going to have an extra 2 inches to play with when he does it. I think Jim is the much more talented, much more skilled fighter, basically everywhere. If Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman wins this thing, it's because he is the more physical of the two fighters. There's no other way that he wins this fight. I think it's either Scott Holtzman by decision, or it's going to be Jim Miller inside the distance. Jim can win this thing by submission. Jim can win this thing by knockout. Jim can grind out a 15-minute position. All paths to victory are open to our guy Jim Miller. Scott Holtzman on the flip side of this thing, not so much. I love the dog shot here. Let's go freaking Jim Miller, and let's get one for the old squad. We are going to continue showcasing the little guys here. We've got a bantamweight fight between Dodson and Nathaniel Wood. This is another fun matchup in my opinion. Now, John Dodson has hit a really rough patch as of late. He's coming off of 2 back-to-back losses. However, it's from Jimmy Rivera and Peter Yan, who is arguably the number 1 contender in the weight class at this point. Nathaniel Wood is 26 years old, 16-3, and he is on a massive win streak right now. I think he's on an 8-fight win streak. John Dodson is 35. He is 20-11. So he is winding down on his career. We're probably not going to see too much more of him as he's getting older, but he still has all the skills to get it done, in my opinion, at this stage against. He's a great gatekeeper. Basically, I think is the best way I could put it. He's not going to challenge for a title anymore. He can't beat guys like Marlon Moraes, Peter Yan, but he definitely can decide who gets into that upper echelon. John Dodson has absolutely insane speed and athleticism. He sweeps leg kicks or he catches them and then uses them for takedowns of his own. He's always getting angles on his opponents, and he blitzes and then he rips the body. That's something I saw him do against Peter Yan very, very well. And you just cannot handle the speed of this guy at 135. Down at 125, he had more power. He doesn't seem to translate that power up at 135. However, he did drop Yan, and I think he's the only one off the top of my head that I can remember dropping Peter Yan. So that power is still there. It might not be quite as prevalent, but it's definitely still there. Now, Nathaniel Wood, 26 years old, really hot prospect. He's got long legs and he's got a good long right cross. He uses that to his advantage. He can hit people where they can't always answer back. He leaps in with a left hook that I like, and he does fire one shot at a time. That's something that I think is very, I'm not sure how I feel about this fight, because the fact that he fires, 1 and 2 punch combos at a time where Dodson will leap in and fire off 6 before you can blink, the speed advantage on Dodson is something that I'm very, very concerned with. Wood does double up on his jab, which I do like to see. He does tend to reach sometimes with his punches. That long range kind of gets the better of him from time to time. He is aggressive with constant pressure, and that's definitely something I like. He cuts off the cage as well, and he always works the leg kicks. However, I think that's something he's going to struggle with Dodson, because first off, he's shorter, he doesn't have quite as much leg to kick, and then he's going to be able to avoid those and get out of the way. Right now, John Dodson is a plus 140 underdog. The comeback on Nathaniel Wood is minus 160. Lots of action coming in on Nathaniel Wood. Well, I take that back a little bit. He opened up minus 165, and that line is ping-ponged basically everywhere, and he's sitting about minus 160 now. Dodson on the other side of things opened up plus 125, and now he's plus 140, so he's got a decent bit more juice on him, even though the line hasn't budged a whole lot on the Nathaniel Wood side of things. It almost seems like the bookie is enticing you to take John Dodson here. Just one more reason for me to pass. I've got a sneaky sensation that this might be the spot where Nathaniel Wood, he's an absolutely great prospect. He's got a great future. I think he's going to go places, but this might be just too much for him. John Dodson, like I said, he's that perfect top 5 gatekeeper. He's going to be that guy that keeps anybody who's not quite ready for that ranking out. This is a step down in competition for John Dodson. This is a step up in competition. Well, theoretically anyway, it's a step down in competition. This is definitely a step up in competition for Nathaniel Wood. I love fading people in that step up in competition spot. I think this is going to be a close, hairy decision because, let's face it, every single one of Dodson's fights is a close, hairy decision. He went to a split with John Lineker. He went to a decision with Eddie Wineland. He went to a split with Marlon Moraes. He went to a split with Pedro Munoz. And then he went to decision with Jimmy and Jan. So John Dodson is fighting close with the absolute elite of his division, and he has been for the past 5 years. I don't expect that to change. Nathaniel Wood might squeak out the win here because he's the younger fighter, because he's got that range. Maybe he can make it work, but I kind of tend to rely on the speed of John Dodson here. I actually think that he is going to be able to get this one done. I think that speed is going to make all the difference. So my pick here is going to be John Dodson. I can't quite pull the trigger on that bet because of all the reasons I've named off already several times on this podcast. Y'all know John Dodson is simply not trustworthy enough. If we're flipping a coin, we know it's going to go to decision. We think it's going to be a split decision. I like to get around plus 150 for that kind of a line. We could take plus 140 on John Dodson at this point, but I'd feel safer with a little extra juice there. You can get John Dodson at 5 times. You can get him over at plus 200 to win by decision, which that I'm very tempted to do. But I've lost back-to-back fights on John Dodson because we took him against Rivera and Peter Yan, and neither one of them came through for us. So I kind of have to take a break here. We'll take a rest. We'll hope this one gets done. We'll hope John pulls out the win just so I've got some bragging rights, but I'm not going to bet on him here. Wow, there's a lot of live underdogs on this card, I feel like. So closing out the prelims, we have got Tim Dirty Bird Means welcoming Daniel Rodriguez to the UFC. Daniel Rodriguez is 33 years old. He is 10-1, one of these late bloomers here for the UFC. Tim the Dirty Bird is 29-11. He is 35 years old himself, and he is one of these up and down, back and forth type of fighters that it is really hard to get a grip on. He's got a lot of good skill sets, but he's also got a whole lot of weaknesses. He is 2-3 in his last 5. He dropped fights to Sergio Moraes and Bilal Muhammad, as well as getting his life changed with a horrific, amazing knockout by Nico Price in March of 2019. He bounced back in December against Thiago Alves very, very impressively, winning that thing by submission. And then he knocked out Ricky Rainey in November of 2018. So when he wins, he does it very handily and decisively. He's taking on a guy in Daniel Rodriguez that I'll be completely honest, I know nothing about, but it looks like he's a banger. He's got 6 wins by KO, TKO, 3 by submission, and then he's only gone to the judges' scorecards twice. He won one and he lost the other. On top of having that many wins, he's got an amateur career. It looks like he's 4-0 in his amateur career. Trains out of 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. Should be the type of guy that's willing to bring the fight, and that's exactly what Tim Dirty Bird needs. If you've got a guy that's willing to stand and trade in the fire with you, Tim Means can hurt and knock out just about anybody. He rocked Nico Price badly before he got dropped. He strikes very well from range. He's very aggressive. However, he is very hittable, and that's kind of the whole thing, is you're really rolling the dice if you're on Tim Means. I've heard a lot of people talking about him being a lock. Obviously, I don't know a ton about his opponent, but I don't think Tim Means is really ever a lock. I mean, I know he looked fantastic in that Thiago Alves fight, and unfortunately that one cost us. I thought Thiago would put up some kind of a fight and get us to that over. We had the over 1.5, I want to say, on that one. But I just can't trust Tim Means. And right now he's sitting around minus 250, minus 260, and that's just way too wide. I don't care who he's fighting at this stage in his career. I think that Nico Price may have broken him. I mean, he already kind of had chin issues. He already had that tall man defense where he was very hittable. But when Nico Price knocks you out the way that he did, I don't know if you ever recover from that. We didn't see him get hit by Thiago Alves. So we really don't know the condition of his chin at this point, but he is getting older, and taking that kind of a knockout that badly, that late in your career, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets clipped with something. If this guy is at all competent, he's going to have a puncher's chance. I'm going to research him later in the week. We'll see if that ends up, bringing up a totals play or anything like that for me. He does seem to be a finisher, so an under very well might be in play here, because if both these guys are coming out to bang, there's a good chance that somebody is going home in a body bag. But besides that, I wouldn't have anything really to say. Unfortunately, the totals aren't out yet, so at this point, I can't look at that. But the fight doesn't go to the distance prop, is minus 240, so we might get a 1.5 type of total, and I'd be tempted to lean under. We'll see where that comes out. And the hits just keep on coming. We've got a lightweight fight between Lando Groovy Vannata, who is 10-4-2, taking on Yancy Medeiros, 15-6. Now that's a name that we have not heard in some time. This fight is gonna be amazing. So Lando Vannata, he keeps his hands low and he throws spinning shit. That's basically all you need to know about this guy. He is more effective moving forward than he is moving backwards, but every once in a while he'll toss in a spinning kick or a spinning elbow that lands and catches people on their way in. He's got excellent reflexes, and that's kind of the key to his whole game. He's just really, really freaking fast. He does get his hands up to block kicks well, even though he keeps his hands low, but he relies on his chin. Lando takes a lot of shots. He's there to be hit, and he just wants to land something just as badly going the other direction to get himself the win. He can be caught coming in because he kind of blitzes in on his opponents, though. He's got very good hips, good takedown defense, and his whole point is to keep this thing standing. He's coming off of a loss to Mark Diakese in a fight that I desperately regret back in September of 2019 because I should have been all over Diakese in that spot, but I got suckered in by what I thought was a juicy line, unfortunately. And he's taking on Yancy Medeiros, who we haven't seen since January of 2019 when he got TKO'd to hell by Gregor Gillespie. Before that, he got TKO'd to hell by Donald Cerrone in February of 2018. So he's coming off of back-to-back horrific knockout losses, and before that, he had a fight of the year contender in 2017 with Alex Cowboy Oliveira. Do yourself a favor. After you get done listening to my podcast, after you follow me on Twitter, after you subscribe and like the video, go over to Fight Pass, hit YouTube, wherever you can, find Yancy Medeiros versus Alex Oliveira. That's Cowboy, the Brazilian Cowboy Oliveira, back December 2017. It's on the Holloway vs. Aldo 2 card. That's an incredible fight. It's an absolutely incredible fight. I have no idea how that fight got out of the first round. The amount of damage that both of those guys put on each other and were able to still somehow walk away from. I mean, Yancy ended up winning that thing in the third round via TKO. I have no clue how they made it to the bell in the first round, much less the second. This is phenomenal matchmaking for these guys. So Yancy is a very, very entertaining fighter. So is Lando Vannata. They've both got finishing ability. Lando's been struggling. He's got 2 draws against Matt Frevola and Bobby Green. He fought Drakkar Klose and Mark Diakese, who are both very, very intelligent, strong, durable fighters. And then he did get a submission win over Marcos Mariona back in February. So he's been struggling to keep his head above water and keep his job, but he's so fun, I can't see them letting him go. Yancy on the other side of this thing, he's coming back after 2 life-changing knockout losses. Before that, he was on a 3-fight win streak that included a submission of Sean Spencer. I cannot talk. Sean Spencer, thank you. Sorry, 3 S's. Submission Sean Spencer. Eric Silva, he TKO'd, and then he KO'd Alex Cowboy Oliveira. So he is looking to get back on track here, but I honestly think he's broken. I just think the amount of damage that Yancy has taken is going to wear on him. He's got very fast hands. He's long. He's rangy. He's got good submission offense. 8 of his wins have come by KO. I mean, these guys are going to brawl. You've got to think that this fight is going to be an absolute scrap. And the way that Lando moves, I think that it's going to be set up for a KO. I slightly favor Lando Vannata. This fight is basically a pick'em with just a little bit of juice over on Lando Vannata. And if I was absolutely sold on the fact that Lando would be able to get this done because of Yancy's chin, I don't think I could still pull the trigger on that because Yancy's such a threat to land a big bomb himself. And even though Lando has not been knocked out yet, I think it's coming. I mean, he fought Tony Ferguson, he fought Bobby Green, Drakkar Klose, Matt Frevola, Mark Diakese, and he took massive shots in every single one of those fights. He's only 27 years old, but eventually that chin is going to bust. The only thing that I can do on this one is I actually want to take the fight doesn't go the 3-round distance at -150. Lando will take a shot to give a shot. And guys like Yancy Medeiros who go balls to the wall are going to land the biggest shots they can. I think Yancy's chin is gone, and after having taken massive KO drops to Donald Cerrone and Gregor Gillespie and being gone for a full calendar year and coming back to face a guy with the kind of heat that Vannata throws, I think it's just a matter of time before one of these guys goes down. I mean, let's face it, Yancy Medeiros hasn't gone to a decision since Francisco Trinaldo back in 2016. And Francisco is a tank. It is impossible to finish that dude. Before that, he got knocked out in 2015 by Dustin Poirier. And then before that, he was choking and knocking people out as well. I mean, this dude just is a finisher. His fights don't go to the judges' scorecards. He's only been to the scorecards 4 times out of his 21 fights. And I think that's actually a really good bet. I'm going to lay the wood here. Fight doesn't go the 3-round distance at -150 is going to be our play. The pick, because I've got to give one, is going to be Lando Vannata. I'm not going to bet him. I'm just going to take the doesn't go to decision rather than betting an over-under when that comes out. I want the full length of the fight. I don't want a 2.5 over-under. I don't want a 150 over-under. I just want to make sure this fight doesn't see the judges' scorecards at -150. Next up, we are sticking around with lightweight, where Brok Weaver is taking on Rodrigo Vargas. Now, Brok Weaver is coming off of the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series Season 3. He won a unanimous decision over Devin Smith, and basically all this guy is he's a grinder. He's primarily a boxer. He uses his hands more often than not, but he's only got 2 knockouts. He goes to decision a whole lot, and he relies on his heart to get there. He will take absolutely everything you throw at him and then just get right back in your face. He will grind you up against the cage until you quit. And I like him. He's fun. He's a little crazy. As far as I'm aware, he's the first ever true Native American that the UFC has signed. And I grew up from a reservation town, basically. I have got a lot of Native friends. My best friend's a Native American. So this is kind of cool for them to have a guy to wave that flag. And he comes out with like the headdress, and he's got the Native tattoos and everything. It's really cool. It's neat to see. Rodrigo Vargas, on the flip side of this thing, is 34 years old. He's 10-3. He's making his UFC second fight. His debut was back in August of 2019. He lost a decision to Alex da Silva. And honestly, I didn't take a look at this guy very much. That was only Alex da Silva's second fight in the UFC. He's 21-2, so not so bad. 24 years old. Can't really hold much against him. I think this is kind of a setup fight for Brok Weaver, truth be told. Again, I didn't look too deeply in Vargas, so take this with a little bit of a pinch of salt. I think the line is way too wide. Brok Weaver shouldn't be this big of a favorite over anybody. He's -280 right now. The comeback on Vargas is +240. And I mean, I don't know. I just don't know. This is going to be a grindy type of fight. That's always what it is when you've got Brok Weaver in there. And I don't know if either of these guys is truly UFC level at this point. This is a complete pass from every way, shape, or form. As far as the pick goes, I will take Brok. I do think that he probably ends up grinding out a decision, but there's no way I'm laying that kind of money on it, and I'm just not touching it. The next matchup is a women's flyweight fight between Montana Mrs. De La Rosa taking on Mara Romero Borella, who until very recently I was relatively high on. I have reassessed my stance on Mara Borella. Montana De La Rosa is 24 years old. She is 10-5, and she's got a very promising skill set. She's 1-4 in her last 5. She ran into KGB Lee, and she actually looked relatively decent against KGB in that fight. She has a good, solid, strong takedown defense or takedown ability. She's very aggressive. She's got good top control. She's aggressive off of her back if she ends up on bottom and scrambles. Whenever she locks up triangles, the triangle position, triangle submissions, she likes to elbow her opponents in the head, and I love that. That's just dirty, nasty fighting. I love when people do that. She does have fast hands when she's on the feet. She works the jab. She's got good head movement, and she has great entries on her takedowns. She has a strong body kick, and she does look for trips to try and get her opponents to the ground when the initial takedown doesn't work. That second effort makes all the difference in the world. That's a Khabib thing. She's very physically strong, and that's something that I do like about her. Mara Borella on the other side of this thing is 33 years old. She is 12-6. She's 1-2 in her last 3. Now, granted, she lost to Caitlin Chukagian and then Lauren Murphy, who's not as bad as any of us thought she was apparently, but she did get flatlined, KO'd by a knee against Lauren Murphy, and that's not something that you want to see. That was back in August, so we're right around that ballpark of where we're okay with fighters coming back from a bad knockout, and she's not exactly fighting the biggest knockout threat, so she shouldn't have to worry about that too much. Mara is tough, and she's aggressive. She has fast hands. She works the low kicks, and really, she's a striker. She doesn't have great ground game, but she does circle well when she's on her feet. She has good footwork, and she seems to slow down and get tired from grappling. She can get controlled and reversed up against the cage, even though she's physically strong. And basically, kind of what I'm seeing here is if you can out physical Mara, she'll collapse. If you can be the more physical, stronger fighter in there, it's just not something that she can handle, and that's something I think that Montana De La Rosa is going to do. I like Montana De La Rosa. I think she's got a perfect skill set here. She'll be able to hang on the feet. I think she's got faster hands, and I do think she'll end up getting the takedowns, and she'll be able to put this thing on the mat. If she gets Mara Borella on the mat, then she's going to grind out a 15-minute decision, or she might even TKO her if Mara decides she wants out of there. We saw her get really, really tired and sloppy against Lucky Lauren Murphy, so I wouldn't be overly shocked to see something like that happen. Right now, Montana De La Rosa is about a minus 170 favorite. You can get plus 150 coming back on Mara, and based on the last time we bought Mara, you would think I'd be all over that plus 150 on Mara, but I really my opinion has completely changed of her over rewatching that fight, learning from my own mistakes here. She won that split decision against Talita Santos, and Santos was able to take her down almost at will, and then she got KO'd by Murphy. This is not a girl I want to trust with my money going forward. Complete pass, not touching it. The pick is Montana De La Rosa. If she was more affordable, I would consider making a bet on her here, but since she's minus 170, I'm not looking to lay that kind of wood. All right, that brings us to the co-main event where we have got a really fun matchup. We have got Diego, the Nightmare Sanchez, taking on Michel Pereira. Now, a long time ago, I tweeted out that I wanted to lock up Michel Pereira right when that line hit at minus 145. We got a 2-unit banger here on Michel Pereira, and I'll explain here why. Diego Sanchez is 38 years old. He's training out of a yoga studio. He's got 29-12 on his record, 4 KOs, and he's had chin problems for a really long time. This is the spot where the UFC is sacrificing Diego Sanchez to make their star look good. They got Michel Pereira off the regional scene. He was doing all kinds of flips and backflips and shit off the cage. He's got an absolute ton of experience, 23 wins and 10 losses, 10 of the 23 by knockout, 6 submissions, and then he's got 6 decisions. Now, he does have 8 decision losses, so he's only been finished twice in his entire career. When he does go to decision, he doesn't tend to do well. But the thing is, this guy's got fast twitch muscles for days. He's incredibly athletic. He actually has a relatively decent gas tank, apparently, unless you force him to wrestle, which Tristan Connolly was able to do. Now, we saw how brutal his power is when he got into the UFC back in May, when he flatlined Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts with a knee, and that was one that I was not expecting. Really opened my eyes about what this guy is able to do at the UFC level even. So I think that this is the last ride of the Nightmare. Diego Sanchez is being brought in by the UFC to make Michel Pereira look good. They know this guy doesn't have much more in the tank. They know this guy is suspect with the knockouts, and this guy brings heat like nothing else. Also, if you follow me on Twitter, which if you haven't, you should, I tweeted out a picture of this guy today. He is in holy shit shape. I mean, best shape I have ever seen him in. He is ready to go. That fight with Tristan Connolly caught him off guard. He wasn't ready for the grappling in that one, and he got grinded out for 15 minutes. He is not letting that happen again. I guarantee you that he is ready for this fight with Diego. Now, Diego's still got his gas tank in his pocket. He's stronger at 170 than he was at 155, and he didn't look too bad against Chiesa, I guess. I mean, Chiesa pretty much mauled him, but he looked great against Mickey Gall and Craig White. Now, both those guys, Mickey Gall and Craig White, are not anybody to write home about, and Chiesa at 170 apparently is kind of a big deal now. So what's going on here? He's going to come in here, and I really think that Michel Pereira is going to just flatline Diego Sanchez. Diego has to be able to eat a couple of big shots to get in and grab those takedowns. If he can get in and grab those takedowns and he can grind on Pereira, he's going to be in a war for 15 minutes. And even in the third round, when everyone starts to slow down a little bit, you're still going to be scared that just one little breeze is going to clip Diego's chin, and that's going to be the end of his night. And that's why I'm on Michel Pereira. I think Michel is too strong and too fast. I think this is probably going to end early, and even if it doesn't end early, Diego's durability is just so bad at this point that I don't put it past Michel to be able to knock him out later in the fight. This dude's 23-10, and he's only 26 years old. I mean, it's insane to think, based on the way he looks and how much fight experience that he has. He's only 26, but he's a very young guy. He's very capable of high-level improvements. Maybe somebody talked to him and was like, you know what? maybe we should mop up on your wrestling here just a little bit if you're going to stick around in the UFC. I expect him to probably do a little bit better with the wrestling exchanges. He's taken his strength and conditioning very seriously. Go check out my freaking Twitter. The picture is absolutely bonkers. And I just think that this is the end of the road for Diego Sanchez. They've done a good job of keeping him away from knockout threats to give him some longevity in his career. We've cashed on him as a big dog coming in a couple of times, and I think that time is over. Now it's time to flip the line. Now it's time to cash in on the fact that the dude has no chin, and you all know I love betting against people who have chin problems. The pick was Michel Pereira. I tweeted him out at minus 145. I hit that line twice, and we once again beat a line move. He's now sitting at about 165 or 175. I mean, you cannot get 145 on him anymore, so I hope y'all locked him up a while back because that price just keeps on going up. I know a lot of people that are saying Diego Sanchez is going to come out here and grapple him to death, and they're going to get the win, but I just don't see it happening. The pick is Michel Pereira. The 2-unit banger bet is on Michel Pereira. And somehow I managed to mess up the fight order here. I apologize. Because of the late scramble replacement stuff, it looks like Google has screwed up the order of the fights, and Devin Clark versus Dequan Townsend is nowhere to be listed. So I will keep this short for y'all. I kind of think it's funny that fight got blasted all the way to the mid-bottom of the prelims instead of being on the main card because of how bad it is now that Dequan Townsend is the guy that's in there. So Dequan is filling in on short notice, and let's face it, this is probably the only fight that he could get to save his run here in the UFC. They probably were like, hey dude, you're cut, but oh shit, we need somebody to fill in here against Devin Clark, so if you accept this, we'll give you one more, and this is probably his only option. He is that bad. So Devin Brown Bear Clark looks like he finally pulled his head out of his ass, and he's moving down to 185 where he always belonged. If you remember listening to this podcast for the last year or so, I have always talked about how small he is at 205 and how he doesn't freaking belong there. He shit the bed and let me down against Ryan Spann, and good freaking riddance to you, Devin Clark. Go down to 185, you idiot. So he trains with John Jones, and he is primarily a wrestler. He's explosive, he's got fast hands, but he's not very good anywhere. The only thing he's got to his name is wrestling, and if you can't tell, I have developed a pure intense hatred of Devin Clark because every time he's supposed to win, he loses, and then every time he's supposed to lose, he wins. So I haven't been able to make any money fading this guy, and I've tried several times, and the one time I bet on him, he costs me. So yeah, I don't like Devin Clark. I considered betting on Dequan Townsend in this fight just to prove a point, but then I realized that would be stupid because the only person that would hurt would be me, because that would be lighting money on fire. Dequan Townsend is 21-10, and he's awful. If you can wrestle, this guy is completely done. He talks about training with wrestlers at his camp, and he says it's no problem, it's no big deal, but one takedown with any type of second tier effort, and he's on his ass, and he has no get-up game whatsoever. Bavon Lewis was able to control him up against the cage for 15 minutes. Dalcha Longiambula was able to take him down at will and then ended him in the third round. Anybody at the UFC level, anybody with half-decent wrestling is going to put Dequan on his ass, and he's going to have nowhere to go from that point because he's too dumb to figure out you need an anti-wrestling and a get-up game at this level. So Devin Clark is going to be the lock of all locks on this thing because at 185, all he's going to do is double leg this guy, and that's it. This is going to be the most boring fight on the card, and it's a good thing it's so low on the prelims these days because it's going to be awful. Devin Clark is minus 310, and unless he gets caught with some crazy uppercut on his way in, I don't see any way he loses this fight. I am not touching him because I refuse to put any more money on Devin Clark, but if you need a parlay piece, there you go. The world thinks that Devin Clark is a lock, and unfortunately, I more than have to agree. Oh, sorry about that. Now that I've calmed down and I'm all zen again, here we go with the main event. We have got a light heavyweight fight between Corey Anderson and Jan Błachowicz, and this is a good one. Again, this is one where I guess it's probably not pay-per-view worthy, but this could be like a pay-per-view co-main event or something. This is a great main event for a free card. I love this fight. So Corey Anderson is on a 4-fight win streak. Overtime is 30 years old, 13-4. He's fighting with a real chip on his shoulder. He is after John Jones right now, and he feels like he deserves that shot. Jan Błachowicz on the other side of this thing is 36 years old. He's 25-8. He's currently riding a 2-fight win streak after being KO flatlined by Thiago Santos, but before that, he was on an impressive 4-fight win streak himself. So he feels like he deserves his title shot as well, and this is a rematch, ladies and gentlemen. These guys have fought before. It was some time ago, all the way back in 2015, but this definitely is a rematch. So Corey Anderson, he's an interesting case. First and foremost, he's extremely athletic, and right now the world is kind of high on him after he comes off of that KO blast of Johnny Walker in the first round in November. I don't look too much into that personally because I think Johnny Walker made a mistake. Corey Anderson and his team were smart enough to identify that mistake, and they were able to just basically punish him for it. I almost would love to see a rematch between those two if Johnny's able to basically tighten that up and comes in with a better game plan. That's never going to happen, but I would love to see a rematch. He has very, very high-level wrestling. He uses boxing more often than not. He keeps his hands in really close, really tight. He protects his chin. There were talks about him being very, very chinny back in 2017. He got KO'd by Jimmy Manuwa and OSP, so everyone said that he's got no chin. I even have said that myself, and I bet on Glover Teixeira against him because I was hoping he would get caught, but I feel like that may have been false news. I mean, he got KO'd by Gian Villante in 2015, so I guess maybe it's not totally false news, but he's done a good job of protecting his chin and being durable ever since, so I don't know if it's as big of a problem as we made it out to be. He does drop his hands a little bit when he breaks the clinch. He shoots from well outside. That's something he can be caught when he comes in on. Occasionally, he'll throw body and head kicks just to change things up. He was, in his fight against Latifi, he actually had leg kicks used to good effect against him. Latifi did some good work with those things, even though he ended up losing the fight. Corey is relatively flat-footed. He's hittable when he moves backwards, but he does have an endless gas tank. He's the type of guy who I feel like is a good hammer, but he's a bad nail. So if you can flip the thing where you're the aggressive fighter, where you're the one dictating the pace, then he's got a problem. But if you can't do that, he will take over and just grind on you for the full length of the fight. Now, Jan Błachowicz on the other side of this thing, I love this guy, and we cashed in huge on him when he fought Souza in his last fight, and when he knocked out Luke Rockhold. We got him as a huge underdog against Luke Rockhold. We knew that KO was coming, and that legendary Polish power was shown off in spades, and then he got the split decision win over Souza, which was a little more close for comfort than I would have liked. Now, I've been talking a lot lately about Jon Jones, as we all have, and the guy who I thought was going to be able to dethrone Jon Jones. I teased it a little bit. Well, here you go. I've changed my mind. So Jan Błachowicz was the guy who was kind of a dark horse for me. I really thought he was going to be able to continue riding like he had been against Luke and Jacare, and he would get by Corey Anderson here, and then Jon Jones would be less than excited about fighting him for a title, maybe slip up a little bit, the fact that he's slowing down, and then Jan would be able to potentially grind out a win against him. I've completely changed my mind. I'm an idiot for thinking that in the first place. Jan is an impressive fighter. He's a good, solid fighter, but he doesn't belong anywhere near the cage with Jon Jones, so let me just wipe that whole thing clean here. He's not the guy I'm picking to dethrone Jon Jones any longer. Now, the biggest thing is his rematch with Corey Anderson. In the first fight, he was not able to stop the takedown whatsoever. He does have excellent eyes, though. He makes great reads. One thing is he kind of makes it look like his opponents are sparring with him. He's able to kind of paw and use his hands as like mitts to bat their punches away. He's very elusive. They have a hard time hitting him. He works the legs and the body. He does well with leg kicks. He does have good solid body shots from the clinch, and something that I've noticed is he has a hard time with the takedown when they're able to get down on his legs. If he can get you above his hips, you're not going to take him down. He forces you to clinch with him. He brings you up to like his shoulder, kind of a over underhook type situation, and then he rips at your body. That's exactly what he did against Luke Rockhold and Jacare Souza. Everybody's talking about how his takedown defense has improved, and he's going to be able to stuff these takedowns from Corey, and I completely disagree. Luke Rockhold is not known for his takedown offense. He's got a sick Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, and he is a decent wrestler, but he's not a great wrestler. He does have a frame for 205. I kind of wish he had made the move to 205 sooner, because he was huge against Jan in there, but Jan had no problem stuffing him. Jacare Souza is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy who's got decent wrestling also. Both of these guys, let me repeat that, have decent wrestling. Neither of them are good. So he was able to defend takedowns from two guys that are decent wrestlers. He subbed out Nikita Krylov, who, let's face it, is kind of a busted prospect. Nobody's overly impressed with that. And then he hasn't fought anybody who's a real grappler since Devin Clark back in 2017, and we all know how bad he sucks. So really, Yan has never faced a high-level wrestler besides Corey Anderson, and Corey had no problem putting him on his ass for 15 straight minutes. I would like to say that both these guys have improved. I do think that they both have, but Corey is still arguably in his fighting prime. Yan, while he does appear to be peaking in his career, is probably past his fighting prime. And I don't think he's going to be able to stuff Corey for a full 25 minutes. The fact that this is a 5-round main event fight really favors Corey Anderson, because even if Yan is good enough to stuff the takedowns in rounds 1 and 2, Corey has an endless gas tank, and unless Yan ends him, unless he puts out his lights with a quick uppercut or something like that when he's shooting in for a takedown in the first round or two, Corey is going to get to him. Corey's eventually going to get to him, and he's going to wear on him, and he's going to drag him to the mat, and then it's just going to be over. Yan does fire one heavy shot at a time. He's got a good jab and a lead body kick that he uses to control range and space. He does throw uppercuts when his opponent shoots, so there's always that option that he'll be able to clip Corey. But like I said, I don't think Corey's chin is as bad as we've made it out to be. Originally, I totally planned on stepping in here and going, guys, we're betting Jan Błachowicz, and we're betting him at plus money. We could have got him at plus 200, and then I did my research, and then the line dipped to plus 90, and I thought about it. The line dipped down to plus 185, and I kept thinking, and now it's at plus 160, and I'm going, you know what? I just don't think it's going to happen. Money is flying in on Jan Błachowicz. These guys opened up at almost a pick'em. Jan was a slight underdog, plus 105 to Corey being a minus 145 favorite, and he immediately got blasted. Corey Anderson took a ton of money early on, and it's just been trickling in back on Yan ever since. And my original read was that I agreed with that, but I think if you look just a little bit deeper, this is Corey all day. The pick is Corey, and I'm honestly very tempted to lay the minus 190 on Corey. That's not something I do very often. I don't like to lay big wood, but this is a spot over a 5-round fight that I feel like it just makes sense. I'm not going to do it right this second because the money continues to pour in on Yan. I want to see if that line will go back down. If we can get a better, more playable line on Corey Anderson, I might have to take that shot. The other thing that I'm looking at is an over, because I do think Corey's going to be able to get to the takedowns, even though Jan's really only path to victory is going to be a knockout, and even though he's been impressive in his last couple fights with a submission win, a KO win, and then a KO loss, they might set the line at 2.5 or 3.5, and I'll consider looking at an over and not have to worry about who wins, just to make sure we get that one locked up based on the line. So to recap, I think Corey is going to just maul Yan for 25 minutes. Corey Anderson is the pick, and Corey Anderson might just end up being the bet. Thank you for sticking with me. Let's recap those picks. We have got our night kicking off with a big dog, Casey Kenney at plus 185. We're not stopping there. We're going to take Jim Miller to keep rolling and turn back the clock at plus 125. We picked up Vannata and Medeiros. Fight does not go to decision at minus 150. I'm expecting a knockout from somebody. And then we will take Michel Pereira at minus 145. That is a 2-unit banger. We're risking 2.9 units to win 2, and just pray that he ends Diego Sanchez. That hurts me to say because I love Diego and he's one of my favorite fighters from the olden days. So I'm sorry, Diego, but I got to do it for the cash. We're going to keep our eye on a couple of lines. We are going to keep our eye on a couple totals. Give me a follow at Die Hard MMA Pod over on Twitter for those updates. Like, share, subscribe. Throw me some comments if you've got questions. I love the interaction. You guys are awesome. Thank you, diehards. Without you, I couldn't do this. I love you guys. Good luck to everybody this weekend. Let's roll.